Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, everyone wants to critique your power pauses, and it was too long, it wasn't long enough, whatever. I got to critique your hello. I didn't care for it. I thought it was a little low energy. We are one day away from heading down to Atlanta and covering the national championship game. I was looking for a much more robust, hello, everybody. And it was just kind of like, hey, guys, it's me, Tony. Like, do you want to try it again, or do you just want to apologize to people and start the show?
Well, I don't want to apologize, so let's try it again. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom. How's it going?
Much, much, much better. We're going to talk about that power pause, but we'll talk about that after the show. We have listener questions to get to. Lots of questions from our listeners. You guys came through as always. We'll probably do more of these shows while we're down in Atlanta, but we want to get a couple done before we leave, so you have stuff to listen to while we are in the car on the way down to Atlanta. So let's start with this one from @SHWilson24. Compare and contrast the Notre Dame and Texas defense. Which one would you rather have?
You know, Tom, it's interesting. I'm going to tell on myself a little bit in terms of my academic history. After I take one test or one subject, I immediately forget all about that. And then I'm on to the next test and the next subject. So when there's a question about Texas, I have to be like, did Ohio State play Texas? Is this a game that we have seen recently? But it wasn't that long ago. So as I'm trying to remember everything that we saw about Texas, I do think there's an interesting comparison between these two defenses. And one of the things that I have loved about Notre Dame's defense is the way they run to the ball, a lot like Ohio State, whereas Texas has some individual talents like Ohio State as well. So I think there are some differences here. But in terms of, let's just start up front. When you look at these two defenses, you saw Colin Simmons, the freshman defensive end. I think Notre Dame, they maybe rotate more and there are guys that flash here and there. But of these two defensive lines, especially now with Riley Mills gone for Notre Dame, if you're asking me to pick one of these two defensive lines, I'm taking Texas because of size, speed, and really I think they had more standout players than Notre Dame, even though we've seen some really good moments from some of these young Notre Dame defensive linemen.
Yeah, and I think the young piece of that is an important piece of that, because young means you're not probably quite as physically developed and you're not probably quite as well-versed in terms of seeing what's happening in front of you and reacting to it. No, Texas was a lot like Ohio State in that they had a talented defensive line, but they also had a veteran defensive line. And that makes a real difference in games like this, where you come in and you've seen it. Like Jack Sawyer has seen all the different variations. Jack Sawyer's probably not going to get fooled on a screen. Tyleik Williams is not going to get fooled on, a trap play. Tyleik Williams has also had 4 years in a college strength program to really get built up and developed and be big and strong and physical. And, no disrespect to the relatively young Notre Dame defensive line, they have not had 4 years in a college strength program. They have not had 4 years of playing on a college field and watching college film. It's just, Texas had a lot of those kind of veteran guys. Notre Dame really has lost some of that with Riley Mills out now. He might have changed my answer on this to a certain degree, because the bit that we saw of him against Indiana was really impressive. And then boom, he's out, and it just has not quite looked the same. And they have pieces certainly there on that Notre Dame defensive line, but it's just not quite as good as the Texas one on the whole. Linebackers, I think the linebackers are kind of similar. Neither one had like amazing, neither team had linebackers that really jump out to you in the way that, there's not anyone that I look at and go, this guy probably has as many tackles as Cody Simon in the average game. Like it's not. And part of that is probably that the defensive line isn't quite as good, so the linebackers aren't quite as clean and able to make plays. And then in the secondary, Texas has the Thor Award winner, Janae Barron, and Notre Dame has a true freshman corner who's been good in the games that we've seen, Leonard Moore, but they haven't really faced anyone with a passing attack worth anything or with wide receivers worth anything. And then on the other side is Christian Gray, who's probably I look at as more of a liability than Malik Muhammad was for Texas. And then at safety, Xavier Watts is great, but Texas had, two really good safeties, I think. Boy, David Makuba and
Andrew.
Someone else.
Andrew Makuba and Michael Taff. I've got it up here, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
A little cheating.
Yeah. So, and Texas's safety play was good, and you want to call the safeties a wash, give Texas a slight advantage at defensive end, call the linebackers a wash and give Texas the advantage at corner. Sure. So that's 2-0-2 for Texas. And that's probably about right. I think, we're talking about Notre Dame, and we're talking about Notre Dame in a way that, in terms of like, boy, there's lots of personnel questions for me here. And I think a lot of that has to do with Ohio State played a brutal schedule going through the CFP. Tennessee, Notre Dame played who in the first round? Indiana. Mm-hmm. Tennessee's probably favored over Indiana. Ohio State played Oregon in the second round. Tennessee played Georgia without Bennett, not Stetson Bennett. Goodness, what year is it? Without what's his name from Miami now?
Cam Ward.
Yeah, no.
Carson Beck.
Carson Beck. Thank you. Oregon facing Georgia minus Carson Beck is probably a 10-point favorite, and then Ohio State playing Texas and Notre Dame playing Penn State in the semis. Texas is probably at least a small favorite against Penn State. Ohio State has just played tougher teams getting here, and they've played teams that are in some ways better than Notre Dame, even though Notre Dame has advanced further than those teams did. So I think you look at pieces and parts of that Oregon team that Ohio State beat and that Texas team that Ohio State beat, and I'm probably taking at least some of them over Notre Dame. And I don't know how many areas with Notre Dame as banged up as they are that I'm saying, yeah, I'm definitely taking Notre Dame over Oregon here or Texas there.
I am looking back over this Notre Dame defense, and I'm just going to mention some of these defensive ends because we've seen them make plays in our 3 games. Like all of these guys have made plays. Joshua Burnham, we've seen him make plays. Junior Tuimoloau has made plays. Even freshman Logan Thomas, I remember seeing at some point do some things, and true freshman Bryce Young has done some things. R.J. Oben had a forced fumble, so these guys have all made some plays. So I may be selling them a little bit short, but the defensive tackle, the interior, has taken a hit with Riley Mills being out, and Texas has Anthony Hill at linebacker, and we can probably just blend into the next question because it's a very similar question as well. We can continue the conversation.
Yeah, so from Chip Roush, Texas's defense was pretty good and very fast. Where is the speed on Notre Dame, and how will that affect the college football playoff national championship game?
I do think they have some speed on the ends. We've seen Tuimoloau make tackles for loss, like multiple tackles for loss. He's been a bit of a pain, and I just mentioned Joshua Burnham. In terms of at safety, we know about Xavier Watts, who is an All-American. Adon Schuler, we've seen make plays throughout this portion of what we've been watching, these 3 games. I don't know how fast they are. They're normal-sized safeties. The linebackers, they all run to the ball. I don't know if they're running faster than Texas. They seem to be moving more in unison than maybe Texas did. But I don't know, Tom, does anybody scream speed here? Because we don't know. It's so hard to judge these secondaries based on the 3 games that we've watched. But I do like the way they run to the ball, all of them.
Yeah, it's a very aggressive defense. It's a very disciplined defense. We've seen some misdirection, and they have defended that well. But there's not, at least so far as we've seen, a real burner. But as you said, you look at the secondary, and we're kind of grading the secondary incomplete right now because they just really haven't played a very good passing attack yet. And that kind of cuts both ways, where we can't give them too much credit because they're not playing great passing attacks. But also, we can't say, oh, no, these guys are slow or these guys are fast because they really haven't gotten tested downfield because they're not playing very good passing attacks. We'll have a much better idea probably about the middle of the second quarter where those guys are going to hold up. I will say Junior Tuimoloau, who you mentioned, just as an edge rusher, we've seen him get around the corner on several offensive tackles. So in terms of a speed rush, I think he's someone I'd keep an eye on. Kingston Viliamuasa, who is a true freshman, linebacker, number 27. He's someone who Ohio State fans know quite well from the recruiting process. We talked about him on the last show. He's quick getting in there. There is some quickness there. There is some speed rush there where that could present a challenge. But Xavier Watts feels like he's more of a big hitter type than a runs a 4.3 40 kind of type. And, maybe I'm wrong about that. We really just haven't seen him be asked to do that really in any of these games so far.
Yep.
All right. Next one from @SherryStorm22. Has there been any update on JT Tuimoloau's health?
Other than the fact that he's still playing and is well enough to play, no, I don't think Ryan Day addressed it. But all expectations are that he's going to be as healthy as he can be. Same with Denzel Burke, expected to play as long as everything goes okay. But no bad news. No news is good news, I think, on the JT Tuimoloau ankle. And as always, when they come back into play, I don't even consider them really injured anymore. If they're playing immediately after having that done, they're certainly going to be playing after having treatment done for an entire week.
Yeah, he came in, he hurt that left ankle, went out, they taped him up real thoroughly on that left ankle. And then I saw him kind of running up and down the sidelines to kind of test it out. And then they had him going against Josh Padilla on the sidelines, the backup center, just to sort of see, hey, how is he doing in terms of being able to push off with that and be able to sort of drive through the offensive lineman and all that kind of stuff. And then he went back in. So I'm going to guess he has spent a lot of time with that ankle in an ice tub this week. I'm guessing that they've probably given him lots of anti-inflammatories and that kind of stuff. Unless he re-aggravates it, I think the assumption is he's going to be fine. He's going to start, and you should see him be something close to 100%. They say over and over again, no one's 100% this time of year. He's not 100%. He won't be 100%, but no one's 100% this time of year. So that's not one that I would look at and have a big concern about, I don't think. Next one from @Lance Not Lance. How aggressive will Day/Chip be in this game? Control the game through defense or try to attack like Tennessee and Oregon?
It's interesting how to attack this Notre Dame team and this defense that is physical and just solid. I did ask Ryan Day, how do you function? How do you deal with a team that just finds a way, whether it's offense or defense? And I'll just read you his answer to me. And this is, at first he's acknowledging that all of these things about Notre Dame says, yes, they're resilient, tough, well-coached. So that forces us to make sure we're playing very, very efficiently across the board. We have to play a clean game. We can't beat ourselves. We've got to make sure we're the best version of ourselves in this game. That's it. And then he says this part: be really, really aggressive and make sure that we're running the ball. On defense, we're tackling really, really well, getting off the field on third down, running the football and being physical and controlling the game. And when it's time to make plays downfield, we've got to make them. Special teams will be a challenge. They do a great job. They're creative in what they do, and you've seen them run fakes and different things. So we have to be on high alert for different things. They're trying to steal a possession, so they challenge in a lot of different ways, and they're a very good team. But I think the question being about how aggressive will Ohio State be, they know they still have to be aggressive. They can't just, Tom, if you're not going to be aggressive in this game, you're playing into Notre Dame's hands. And the one thing you don't want to do against a Notre Dame or a Michigan is play into their style of football, because then, boom, you're doing them a favor.
Yeah, I think you can think of this in terms of the Michigan game. You can think about this in terms of Ohio State playing Iowa in recent years, where, the Notre Dame offense is better than the Iowa offense has been, but they're going to be closer to Iowa than they are to Ohio State in terms of offensive production, or, the high end, what this could look like in terms of a high end offensive output against a pretty good defense. What does Iowa want to do? What did Michigan want to do? They wanted to drag Ohio State down into the muck and get into a rock fight where, hey, you get one play, Ohio State misses one tackle on Kalal Mullings, and then they get into field goal range, and boom, they kick a field goal and they win 13-10. That's what Notre Dame wants to do. It might not be 13-10, but it might be 17-14. It might be 20-17. It might be 24-21. That's what Notre Dame wants to do. What Notre Dame does not want to do is fall behind 14-0 in the first quarter, because then they are in deep trouble. That is going to be not a good time for Notre Dame if they're down 14-0 early. And Ohio State, I think, knows that. And I think Ohio State is expecting Notre Dame to not be able to do the same thing to take Jeremiah Smith away that Texas did. Texas plays a ton of zone. Notre Dame plays a ton of man. They're very different defenses, and you can't just say, okay, well, now we're just going to learn to play zone this week, and we're going to, Notre Dame plays some zone. They play a little bit of zone, but it's somewhat limited. They can't get away with playing the same 3 zone coverages all game. So either you're going to install a whole new defense this week, which is probably not going to happen, or you're going to have to play man. And if you're playing man, that plays into Ohio State's hands a little bit in terms of the passing attack. I think you're going to see Ohio State be very aggressive early, try and get an early lead. If Ohio State gets the ball, if Notre Dame wins the toss and Ohio State gets the ball and they go down and score a touchdown on the opening possession, and Notre Dame gets the ball and has to punt, in Notre Dame, you're 5 minutes into the game and Notre Dame is in danger zone at that point. Because if Ohio State's up 14-0, then you're really kind of up against it, and you're in a spot where you have to do stuff you don't want to do. You can't just rely on the run game. If Notre Dame can't run the ball, they're in big trouble. If Notre Dame's down big, they're in big trouble. There's just a lot of that stuff, and it's just, what can Ohio State do to get themselves in a position to put Notre Dame in a bad spot? And I think you're going to see them run the ball. Yeah, you're going to see them probably throw some screens to take advantage of the fact that Al Golden is probably going to be blitzing, bringing a lot of pressure at times to try and get Ohio State off the field. Because I don't think Notre Dame can just man for man go up against Ohio State, just play it straight, 11 on 11. Our best corner will cover your best wide receiver. I don't think that's going to work for Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame knows that. So they're going to have to be aggressive to try and make plays to get Ohio State off the field. I'm looking for Ohio State to get the ball out to guys in space. Just if you think Notre Dame's coming with the 6-man blitz, run a little slant to Jeremiah Smith and let Jeremiah Smith get the ball in space behind 5-6 Notre Dame defenders, and then go ahead and try and tackle him in space. Go ahead and try and, run the thing. They're not obviously going to run the same play they ran to open the Rose Bowl, but same thing. Just the opening play to G. Scott, was that an aggressive call? I mean, I guess in a way, but it was just, they had him show block and then release, and Oregon got fooled and he was wide open and they picked up 30 yards. Like, I think you can be aggressive and not be throwing the ball 60 yards in the air. You can be aggressive in the mid-range passing attack. That's kind of what I'm looking at, as Notre Dame is probably going to have to get closer to the line to try and stop the run. And if they do, you just throw over that. And you have to assume that the Ohio State wide receivers, who have been better than all of the secondaries they've played so far this postseason, are going to be better than this secondary for Notre Dame as well. And you just, at that point, get them the ball in space and let them make plays. But yeah, I think this is a game where Ohio State should come out swinging, should come out trying to make a statement, should come out trying to get an early lead, and I think they're going to.
Maybe we will see the first pass play that we ever saw to Jeremiah Smith in this game, when he dropped the tunnel screen against Akron way back when, the first pass he ever saw as an Ohio State Buckeye. But we have seen Penn State went for 141 yards on the ground in the first half, and they went for over 200 in the game. If Ohio State runs for 141 yards in the first half in this one, I don't see them losing. I don't see them giving the game away a bit like Penn State did. Now, Notre Dame made some changes, and I'm pretty sure they're going to make some changes after whatever happens in the first half to try to control the second half, and that's great. But in terms of this question, I don't see this as an either or. Lance asks, how aggressive will they be? Control the game through defense or try to attack like Tennessee and Oregon? They did both of those things in those games. They controlled the game through defense and they attacked. And so there's no reason that they can't do the same thing or attempt to do the same thing in this one, because the Ohio State defense as it is playing right now is almost certainly going to control a game in some form or fashion. And Notre Dame's style of offense lends itself to being in those kinds of games. So that's one game. Almost has nothing to do with the Ohio State offense versus the Notre Dame defense, where you don't need to worry about the defense. You don't need to worry about your own defense. Just Go be your offense and do what you think that needs to do, what needs to happen on that side of the ball, and the defense will control its own thing. But I do think they'll be aggressive, but it's also going to be situationally based. If they're constantly backed up inside their own 12-yard line, they're not going to be as aggressive. They're going to be trying to get out of there so that they can then become aggressive. So a lot of this is going to be field position based as well.
Yeah, for sure. And if Ohio State can just get off the field on defense, that's going to help them avoid those bad field position issues. If they can avoid turning the ball over, that's going to help them avoid those bad field position issues. It's just, we keep coming back to the same thing, which is if Ohio State doesn't turn the ball over and Notre Dame can't steal a possession or, score points or create short fields on special teams, then that really narrows their number, the number of different ways they can win this game. Notre Dame needs to score points or create real short fields and basically hand the offense points through the defense or through the special teams. And if the Ohio State defense can get off the field quickly, Notre Dame gets the ball to 25 and Ohio State forces a 3 and out and Notre Dame's punting from their own 30-yard line. That's a tough place to try and, run a fake. And it's also a tough place to pin Ohio State deep. So if you get off the field, then you're handing the ball to your offense in decent field position, or even if you get into 20, you net 50 yards on a punt, which would be an incredible punt. Ohio State gets the ball to 20 and you're not in a coming out situation. You can just run your regular offense at that point. It just, I think in terms of the defense, Ohio State's going to be very aggressive and try and make Notre Dame force them to beat them through the air. I think because that's not what Notre Dame wants to do. They have receivers who can make plays, but they don't have a quarterback who consistently throws the ball particularly well. The most consistent receiver we've seen has been Mitchell Evans, the tight end, and that's great. He's been really good, but not someone who is gonna he's not Tyler Warren. And the wide receivers on the whole have been fine, but there hasn't been hey, this guy is consistently, definitely the best wide receiver they have. I think the best wide receiver we've seen them have really is Jordan Faison, who's number 6. He's really elusive in the screen game. I don't know that he's someone who is gonna, he was 7 for 89 or something like that in the Indiana game, and that was by far the best game he had in the playoffs. Jaden Greathouse had a couple nice receptions against Penn State, but one of them, Penn State's corner just fell down. So, okay, in place where the corner does not just fall on his butt with no help from the receiver, he was, 50 yards receiving. There's just not a consistent passing threat there. And that's even before you get to, hey, Ohio State's got some pretty good safeties and some pretty good corners. So if the Ohio State defense can win the battle at the line of scrimmage and, just the 4 defensive linemen and Cody Simon, just like those 5 guys, if they can control the running game with those 5 guys, the path to win for Notre Dame gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And with the offensive line being as banged up as it is, I think that's a possibility. The Notre Dame offensive line, if it was full strength, we're having one conversation, but it's not. They're missing Anthony Knapp, their left tackle. Right tackle Rocco Spindler's hurt. The center's had some snapping issues the last couple of games. And Jagasaw, I guess, is going to play left tackle, maybe. I mean, they had Tosh Moore, I think, was playing left tackle. Tosh Baker, sorry, in the Orange Bowl, but he had played one snap since mid-October, and it was a kneel down. So he's not the guy who they're looking at as like, oh yeah, this guy's definitely going to be a big time left tackle. And there's just so many different areas where Notre Dame's like, well, if they were healthy, we'd be talking about this game one way, but they're not, so we're not. And it's, you would love to see these two teams if they were both healthy, because I think it would be a better game. I think it would be probably a pretty good game if both teams were 100% healthy. But Ohio State's missing a couple offensive linemen, and it just feels like they're in a better spot with those guys out. Because they've had some time to figure it out and solve the problem. And Notre Dame is kind of in the like, let's try this kind of mode. And that's not where you want to be 4 days out from a national championship game.
We have seen these two, well, not these two teams, but we've seen Ohio State and Notre Dame play when they're both healthy, and it was a hell of a game. last year in the opener, or so, the year before in the opener. They've been freshish the last two times they've played. I will say, when we talk about the Ohio State passing attack, all we say is, as long as Will Howard has time, they'll be fine. You can't say that with Notre Dame. There are so many other factors when you talk about the Notre Dame passing attack. First, it's Riley Leonard needs to have time. Then he needs to throw an accurate ball. Then a receiver needs to get open. Then a receiver needs to make the catch. Like, these are all levels of things that need to happen that you can't assume will happen. With Ohio State, you're just like, as long as Will Howard gets time, they're going to catch it. He's going to throw it. They're going to be fine. But Riley Leonard can have time, and then there are still faults in what can happen. There are fail points throughout the entire passing game process for Notre Dame. So it's not just as simple as, well, as long as Riley Leonard gets time, they're going to be able to throw the ball, because that's not the case.
Yeah, there are more failure points there for Notre Dame's offense than there are for Ohio State's offense. And that's, I mean, it is what it is. Notre Dame is not going to win this game by outscoring Ohio State 38-35. Like, I don't think even the biggest Notre Dame homer is going to say, oh yeah. This turns into a track meet. That's great for Notre Dame. Like, it's just Notre Dame. There are ways. Again, we keep saying this because I don't want anyone to say, oh no, they're thinking there's no chance. Like, there's a way Notre Dame wins this game, but that is to drag Ohio State down into the muck. And that really ties in nicely with the next one, which is from @ScarletGreat_CT. Was the Michigan game a learning experience for a team that's somewhat similar in Notre Dame? And I think the answer to that is yes. I think that's an incredible lesson for Ohio State, because they got dragged down into that kind of a game. And there was lots of stuff that factored into that. And Michigan has a very good defense. That's number one. I think Michigan's defense, especially defensive front, is better than what Notre Dame has right now, but that's certainly part of it. I think the fact that Ohio State, you mentioned the field position earlier, they had a bunch of just dumb stuff, dumb bounces that went against them. Caleb Downs didn't field the punt. They got pinned way back deep, and they were in that coming out spot where they were kind of limited. Trey Van Henderson mishandled the kickoff. That pinned him way back. Michigan pinned him back on a punt at one point. And then Will Howard got banged up, was hurt, and was not 100% in that game, not even close to 100% in that game. And all of that stuff adds up to, hey, it's a close game. It's late. It was not that Ohio State got run off the field. The game was tied with 4 minutes left. The game was tied for basically the entire second half. And then Michigan made the one play and got to a point where they could kick a field goal, and then Ohio State couldn't answer. And that was it. And I think the lesson there is, it goes back to a lesson that Ryan Day's talked about all year long. Leave no doubt. That's been Ryan Day's mantra all year long. Leave no doubt. And that was a game. And the whole point of leave no doubt is get out front. Don't leave yourself in a spot where, hey, one stupid bounce or one bad play or one whatever can cost you the game. And don't get to the point where you need to kick a 50-yard field goal to beat Georgia in the Peach Bowl. Don't leave yourself to the spot where, hey, pick any of 9 things that went wrong against Clemson in the 2019 Fiesta Bowl, where they had a fumble, or J.K. Dobbins gets hurt, or Chris Olave breaks off his route, or whatever. Pick your thing there. Don't leave yourself in a spot where you're one play away, one silly bounce away from something bad happening. That, I think, is the lesson for Ohio State, and I think that goes back to a lot of the why behind the answer we gave to a couple questions ago.
Yeah. And that Michigan result alone is another reason why we keep saying, yes, Notre Dame can win this game, because we saw Ohio State lose to a worse team than Notre Dame. So the possibilities are there. And when we talked about before that game, how could Ohio State lose it? A lot of what we talked about happened in that game. And so if those same things happen in this game, and not even all of those same things, if some of those same things happen in this game, you're going to have a 4-quarter game. And then anything can happen in that fourth quarter. Texas certainly didn't think they were going to lose 28-14 when they had first and goal, when it was 21-14 against Ohio State. And Ohio State stepped up, and, they didn't step up against Michigan the last time. They gave up a field goal, and, until those points are on the board, you think you can still keep them off the board. That's been their belief. We've seen Ohio State do really, really well in goal-to-go situations, and they've held Penn State, they've held Nebraska out, certainly Texas and Oregon as well. But we know that this Ohio State team can be beaten. But knowing that now, Ohio State knowing that, they would be less susceptible to that. But sometimes special teams happens and bounces happen. So whether you know it's possible or not, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to control the bounce of the ball or a fantastic punt or just getting the absolute best from an opponent, which you have to expect and then you have to deal with. And it's not going to be easy. We keep talking about, I don't know where the points come from, Notre Dame. I think the one thing that I do believe is that whatever Ohio State gets, they're going to earn in this game.
Yeah, this is not going to be an easy game by any means for Ohio State. Notre Dame makes you work for it. Notre Dame makes you do it the hard way. And I think Notre Dame is going to make this a difficult, this is going to be a challenging game for Ohio State. I just think Notre Dame probably just doesn't have the personnel at this point, especially with the injuries, to hang with Ohio State for 60 minutes. But the longer this is a competitive game, the longer this game is 10-7 or 7-3 or 13-10 or whatever it is, the better for Notre Dame, because we've seen Notre Dame take close-ish games, 10-0 against Penn State late in the second quarter, and boom, get through the middle eight and it's 10-10. 3-3 against Georgia heading into the middle eight. By the time the middle eight's over, they've kicked a field goal, they've forced a fumble, they've scored a 13-yard touchdown drive, and then they've run a kickoff back, and all of a sudden you go into the middle eight at 3-3 and you leave at 20-3. That's what Notre Dame can do if you let them hang around. You just have to not let them hang around. You've got to put them away when you have an opportunity to. And, a lot of that also just depends on who wins the toss, because Notre Dame has won the toss, I think, in all three of their college football playoff games, I believe. They certainly won it in the last two, and they've taken advantage of that middle eight. If Ohio State wins the toss and defers, that is a little bit of a blow to Notre Dame, because that's been where Notre Dame has made a lot of their hay during the CFP. Just that little thing could take that away from Notre Dame. And so there's a lot of different stuff that, again, a lot of stuff has to go right for Notre Dame. It could. We have seen the stars align in this season. We've seen the stars align in past college football playoff games for the opponent to do something to beat Ohio State. We saw it this year with Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame. You think a bunch of stuff didn't have to go wrong for that result to happen? Like, it can happen to anyone. It's just a matter of which team handles their business and takes advantage of their opportunities. Next one from @South of 70Farmer. Will Notre Dame adjust to more of a zone defense after seeing how Texas was able to somewhat stifle the Ohio State offense?
Tom, I tweeted out a quote from Notre Dame freshman cornerback Leonard Moore about what they will be doing defensively. And I'm going to read it for everybody. And this is, again, Notre Dame freshman cornerback Leonard Moore. Going into this game, we're not going to change who we are. We're going to play man coverage like we do every week. We're going to go out there and challenge their receivers. And then you might suspect that all of the comments or so many of the quote tweets and the replies are like, yeah, sure. You sure you want to do that? All of these sorts of things. This is how I win. All of these, if you man up against Ohio State, you're dead. And it's like, well, I mean, that's not necessarily the case, but we saw with Texas's zone how they were able to shut down Jeremiah Smith, but Carnell Tate has a career day. Emeka Buc-ee does well. G. Scott does well. Will Kazmarek has a couple of catches. Travion Henderson averaged 75 yards a catch. I mean, they found some ways, but one of the main points that I keep thinking about when people ask if, there's no way that Notre Dame does what they've done all year and stays in all of the man that they play. And it's like, well, do you go into this game, if you're Notre Dame's coaching staff, and be like, we don't believe in you, so we're gonna have to do more zone. We're gonna have to do a lot more zone. And is that really the kind of messaging that you want to put out there? Now, you're not just going to do one thing over and over again. They're going to change things up, and everybody drops in some zone here or there. So I don't think it's just going to be 100% man or, cover one type of thing. They do some cover three as well, and it'll drop back a little bit. But overall, they're going to do what they do, but they also, like anybody, will adjust to what is best for you against this opponent. But I don't see them going changing to Texas's defense in the span of a week?
It would be a more interesting conversation where we're in a hypothetical world where you could do that, whether they would do that. And I think there's a decent chance that they might at least try it. And I think there's a pretty good chance that you're going to see more zone from Notre Dame than you've seen, but they just don't play very much zone. And so even if it's 30% zone, that would be more zone than they play right now, but that's still the majority man. And realistically, you can't just put in another defense, install another defense in the next couple weeks. You could throw a couple different zone looks in there, and in addition to what you've run before, and they'll probably do some of that. But you can't just go Control C, Control V, the Texas game plan, because you just don't have the time. You don't have the hours in the practices. You don't have the hours into the meeting room. You don't have the time to do that. And have they potentially, practiced some other zone looks that they haven't run in games? Yeah, sure, that's possible. We have no way to know whether they have or not. But their identity is a man team, and when you've been practicing majority man coverage since the spring, it takes a while to get all that stuff right. You can't just throw, okay, and now we're going to, it's like you didn't go to class all year and then you're going to, okay, well, I'm just going to cram in the 12 hours before the final. I'm sure it'll go great. Like, I'm really going to pay attention. I'm sure it'll be fine. That doesn't really work that well. And that's especially true we keep talking about how young this defense is. The defense doesn't have the reps, both in the field, the mental reps, the film room reps. They haven't, you take someone who's like a Lathan Ransom and a Denzel Burke and a Davison Igbinosun and a Jordan Hancock and even a Caleb Downs, who's, enough of a film room rat that he's a sophomore, but really he's kind of a little bit more experienced in that. You take that and then you look at Notre Dame secondary and it's like, yeah, Xavier Watts is a veteran, but Christian Gray, true sophomore. Leonard Moore, true freshman. Those are guys who just don't have the game reps, don't have the film room reps, don't have to sort of have that shortcut. We talk to these guys all the time about the fact that, Will Howard, watching film now, he's seen so much stuff, or in the game, he finishes the coach's thoughts when they're calling the plays. Like, yeah, guy got it. Yeah. He knows what they're doing because he's seen it. He's played for 5 years. That's what a lot of these guys on the Ohio State defense have, where they have so many starters who are fourth-year guys, fifth-year guys, even third-year guys. Notre Dame doesn't have that luxury, so they don't have the sort of cliff notes to sort of the cheat sheet to get stuff installed quicker. There's just a lot of that stuff that all kind of adds up to make me think, yeah, I'm sure they would love to play more zone. I don't think they can do it just because of the amount of hours. They run into an hours in the day problem. You probably do that as well. Like, you have lots of stuff you want to get done, but then by the time it's bedtime, you still have 4 things left on your to-do list because you're out of hours in the day. That's kind of where Notre Dame is. And how are they going to hold up in man coverage? I don't think it's going to go great, but again, we haven't seen them play a really good passing offense yet. We keep threatening to go back and watch the USC game, and we need to do that because I really do want to see what the secondary looks like against a halfway decent passing attack, because they haven't faced one in the college football playoff, and they're going to face one in Atlanta, and I don't quite know what to expect there.
No, I'm with you. I don't know that we have time for this last question. Let's just do it really quickly.
Oh, come on now. We always have time for our friend Kevin Noon. At Kevin_Noon, are you stopping at Buc-ee's and buying Kevin a bag of beaver nuggets? And just so people are wondering, well, certainly, why Kevin's driving down with you. The team travels together to the game, Tony. That's how it goes. Tony and I and our buddy Marcus from the Dayton Daily News, we're all making the road trip together because it's only 9 hours down to Atlanta, and we're from the Midwest, and that's right down the road, Tony. Right down the road is how you describe a place that's 9 hours away. That road is I-75. It goes past a bunch of Buc-ee's. Kevin, Tony, what's a good way to say soft? What's a polite way to say soft? Because I don't want to call him soft, but I want to express that he's soft and is choosing to fly instead of drive. So what's a good way to call him soft without actually calling him soft?
Dainty, petty. No, that's just a different word for something else. How about princess-like? I'll tell you what, Tom, as I'm saying all of this, I'm going to add in some beeps, and it'll sound like we're really getting after him.
That sounds great. So yeah, we are planning on stopping at a Buc-ee's I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Listen, life is a meritocracy. You get what you earn. So, maybe we'll get some beaver nuggets, and we'll see if Kevin earns the beaver nuggets down in Atlanta. And in case you're wondering what beaver nuggets are, well, we'll probably, if we do stop at a Buc-ee's, we'll probably do a story at a Buc-ee's explaining some of the unique and fun stuff that they have there. So you can find that on our YouTube channel. I'm going to guess, assuming we do stop at a Buc-ee's later on this week.
Yeah, I've never had beaver nuggets. I was just looking up to see what they were. My suspicions were confirmed that I was correct. At some point, I don't know, the timing probably won't work out on the way back, on the way down. On the way back, maybe a good meal there, a brisket sandwich or a chicken burrito, all of the regular things that you buy at a gas station. I'm more of a just a BP guy. That's where I like to eat. Or that's where I like to get my stuff. The finest of British Petroleum barbecue products and rolled hot dogs. That's what I like.
Which is your favorite of the food groups? Roller. Gas station roller is my favorite of the 4 food groups. Yes, that's definitely one way to live your life. Yes,
it is. It's the only way to live. So there you go. That is the first of our several listener questions episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hit that thumbs up before you go if you're watching on YouTube. Of course, hit the bell to be notified and subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. And as always, find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. First month, just $4.99. You can check us out there. We are talking about this game and everything else going on. And of course, want to thank our sponsor, GratefulGriddleOH.com as well. They are a Columbus-based food truck. They will come to you. They will deliver good food, smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, all the stuff that you would come to expect from a place like Grateful Griddle, where you can get good food, good times, good people. They will take care of all of that for you. So check that out, GratefulGriddleOH.com. So that will do it for us. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.